Hello, hello, you guys. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited. Today we have Anni Graham. Anni, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to hear about your story, your career development, all of that good stuff. But for those who may not know you yet, would you mind giving us a little intro?
Yes, I am a wedding photographer based in Oregon, and I have been doing this full time for 6 years and not full time for much longer than that, probably 12 or 13 now. What are we, 2023? Been doing
Yeah,
this
I'm
for
like,
13
I have no
years.
idea.
I know. I was doing elopements for a while, and then this last year I just transitioned into shooting luxury weddings. I also have a education business, so I do a lot of education for photographers and workshops and courses online and all of that. So I feel like most of my business in life is split between weddings and education.
Amazing. How has the transition from elopements into luxury been? That's like a really big shift.
Oh, it's insane. Yeah, no, not good for mental health.
What made you want to make that shift? Was it like a natural thing? Was it an intentional decision?
No, it was intentional. I mean, I still just really, really love elopements. I think that's just kind of where my heart is and maybe always will be because I pretty much eloped and I think I just found so much meaning and depth in, smaller, more intentional weddings and gatherings and all of that. But as soon as I had my first kid, I just felt this really strong pull to transition my lifestyle from basically spending like 250 days on the road to
Mm.
how can I now balance and create work that I feel really connected to and still be at home and not be traveling for more than half of the year. And I kind of had a few options in mind of, what's my next step forward. And it actually took me over a year to decide what to do because it just felt like such a huge pivot in my career. And, it even played a part in my education because I did a lot of education on elopements. And so that has been influenced as well. But yeah, it was really intentional, mostly just to find a different balance to lifestyle with family and travel and all of that. And so I decided to go back into weddings and to do them in a really intentional way still. And I kind of like really naturally landed in a higher end luxury market just because of how much I wanted to, I guess, just for me, trying to discover how much I was willing to give to travel and being away from such small children.
Hmm.
That might change as they get older, but I think for this season, for sure, it was kind of almost out of necessity. This is
Mm.
what I need to do. This is how much time I have to give. And how can I work and be intentional on these really big projects instead of doing a bunch of small ones all throughout the year? It's like I wanted to transition to this one big event, this one big wedding with a whole team and a team that I was bringing. And for me to not do it alone and to kind of put all of my time and energy into this like incredible day instead of, shooting 30 to 40 elopements all throughout the year, all over the world. Like
Hmm.
it's like I just consolidated all the energy that I was putting out and wanted to put it in one place. And I just naturally fell into the high end luxury world because that's kind of what facilitates that much time and
Hmm.
energy and attention. So that
That
was
makes sense.
the reason for the big shift.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So I would love to get into that more because that is such, you're known for, or we're known for, your like crazy expansive travel elopements, like you're saying. I'm like, feel like I can always picture your images in my head of you traveling the world. And that is so, so different than this luxury market, especially if you were specializing in elopements rather than weddings, even. Like, I'm sure the transferring of portfolios was even a very specific thing. So, could you talk us through what that looked like for you? Like, in the beginning, when you were like, okay, personal things need to change. I want more time at home. I think I want to break more into a market where I can work less often and at a bigger, more luxury price point. What was kind of your first couple steps?
Well, number one, I had to change my content.
Mhm.
I had to be relevant to that type of client. And that's something that I'm still working on. It definitely takes at least a year, I think, to transition what you're really sharing to kind of match what you want to be shooting. I think people don't really understand just how long it actually takes for not just your content to change, but for people's ideas and represent, like, the fact that everybody knows and remembers me as an elopement photographer obviously doesn't surprise me. The people that don't even know that I shoot weddings now also doesn't surprise me, because it takes kind of a while to really transition and find your voice and an entirely new niche, an entirely new type of image that you're sharing. So first, with content, I needed to sadly stop sharing all of my Yosemite elopements and all of that, which I still shot last year, so that I could focus on sharing content that was going to be relevant to my potential client. And then the second thing too was just kind of updating everything that I had online. So, changing the verbiage and the copy of what was on my website. I did an entire rebrand, which ended up something that I had wanted to do for a while anyways, and it just had so perfectly lined up with and kind of pushed me to make that decision to transition into luxury weddings, was having an entire rebrand of my website so that I could be really intentional about what I was saying and sharing there. Because I think words have so much weight in how you represent yourself. And I think people really underestimate that. So I needed to change the visual and I needed to change the verbal expression of who I was as a photographer. So that was, and still is, definitely a huge priority for me. And then it was just, apart from the followers that I have already, it was, okay, there's this whole market of wedding photographers and luxury wedding photographers, and they don't know who I am.
Mm,
Not a clue. And so, because I think so much of weddings you get from, referrals from wedding planners or florists, or, hey, I can't shoot this wedding, but I know this other photographer who can, so other photographers. And I just like wasn't even in that circle. And
mm,
so I have put a lot of intention into just getting my name and my work published again, which I hadn't had published in a while, and um, trying to get on the radar of wedding planners who work in that market, who are connected with my potential client, and basically just kind of, I don't know, throw myself in the running, I guess.
yeah. What did like so many questions. But one, what did your like networking kind of look like when it comes to connecting with those like planners or vendors that would be in the sphere that you want to be in? I think a lot of people get really nervous about the concept of networking. Like it seems really, really scary, or they picture like classic networking giant events, which they're just not. How did you kind of approach that?
The biggest thing that I started with was like, yes, this is uncomfortable. I'm not going to do something that I don't know how to do. I'm starting with the people I know.
Mm,
So I just started with the planners that I had already known and worked with in the past, even though it had been a couple of years, and just wanted to make sure that they knew this is what I was doing. That's obviously unique to me, right? And but I think that that's like such an important thing when you're just putting yourself out there in general, is like, don't start with a stranger and
mm,
then work your way back. Like, start with your inner circle and the people that you already know, and then work your way out to like their connections, and then work your way out to random strangers. Like, follow that progression that I think everybody does when they start their business. You don't start a photography business and then look for strangers to hire you. Like, you usually shoot
mm.
for your friends, and then your friends of friends, and then other referrals, and then eventually people will randomly find you and book you. So it's exactly the same concept of, who do you already know that's planning weddings that you've worked with before, whether it's somebody that I met at a workshop even, or um, had done a styled shoot with, and had shot a wedding with in the past, who has also been growing into luxury weddings, and started with them first to just establish like, hey, I'm doing weddings again. Can we work together? I'd love to work together. And then I kind of worked my way out from there, which was, okay, how can I be, it's like, how can you network into that second group of like your friends? Because you can't really like force somebody to refer you, right?
Mhm.
So how do you do that? Well, my approach is you have to, I don't know, be the type of photographer that a planner would want to work with. You have to gain their trust. You have to gain the trust of other vendors. So being really intentional about sharing their work, making sure they get quality content from you, making sure that you're putting time and energy into that, as well as, um, your clients, like vendors, have become really important to me. Like, how can I connect with them at a wedding that I shoot? Anytime that I'm working with them, what do they also need? Because I have so much power as a photographer. Like, I represent all of their work. So how can I do that in the best way? That's my approach to like that second ring of how can I get connected with people who would want to refer me and who would feel really confident referring me.
Mm.
And then, of course, like getting published, I think is probably the easiest way for me to think of like getting random stranger people to recognize me, and then, making a connection with that publisher or that editor, because who knows the type of connections you're going to get from like any of, like I've
Yeah,
been
it's like
referred for
everyone's
stuff
a
that,
potential client.
yeah, like I've been referred for stuff from the most random, for the most random reason and from the most random person. So I think it's not as intimidating as it needs to be, because you don't have to like, you can. I haven't. I might need to at some point, but I don't think you have to just start like cold calling and sending strangers emails and being like, I want to work with you. Because when does anything like that land in your inbox and you're like, oh wow, I want to work with you too?
Yay.
Almost never, almost never. So instead of putting all of this pressure and time into doing something that really doesn't actually have a very high success rate and is almost like a little cringy, like it's almost working against you, how can you just focus on the people you know, and then being that type of vendor that is so easy to refer because you trust so much? So I guess that's my approach to it, because like I totally see it as this just like fog, like how do I even jump this giant body of water to get to the other side of what I'm looking for? There are no steps.
Hmm.
And there are, I think you're just overthinking it, probably
Which
putting
is
too much
usually
pressure on yourself.
a lot of things. Yeah. Okay, I love that. I also just think people need to hear repeatedly that like they're overthinking things, myself included. Like it doesn't need to be as complicated as we make it. My question for you is, as you went from elopements, which come with their own sets of challenges and situations and ways of navigating, both on like a technical and a personal standpoint, did you find that your photography skills and the way that your clients maybe operated within a workflow or process changed when you made this transition? Like, did you have to make any big changes on even just how you would approach photographing the day?
Biggest change was just a totally different level of communication with my client. So high-end clients, they're paying for the service of somebody to kind of take care of things for them, and that's the planner. And so I communicate with the planner way more than I communicate with my client. And I might have one call with them where we talk about like, what's our plan, what's really important to you, you know what what can I bring to your day. But it's nothing compared to the like 50 emails back and forth I had with the elopement clients, where I'm helping them plan the entire thing. I guess I was in the shoes of the planner. So I switched back to just being a vendor and
Just
a
being a vendor and
photographer.
photographer. We love to hear it. Did you notice a change in like your actual photography style?
No, I think that surprised me a lot too. I think what I was doing in elopements is like exactly what a high-end client wants. They
Mm,
want something that's tailored to them. They want something that's intentional. They want something that is creative and is really beautiful. And um, somebody that kind of can mesh and mold into any environment and to really be present. And I felt like everything that I was doing with elopements, it was so it was so easy for me to transition that into luxury because like I even have actually a sticky note on my wall that says luxury is personal and on purpose. It's about the experience and the exclusivity. And that's what people want to pay for and can pay for is something that feels really tailored to them, which is 100% an elopement, and something that feels more like an experience from a professional and not just somebody showing up and doing their job.
mm,
And I think there's obviously a wide range of the type of photographers that exists in that niche where I don't see that happening, but that's not the client that I want anyways. And so the things that turned me off about the luxury market were like things that turned me off about regular weddings and things that turned me off about elopements. Like it exists everywhere.
mm,
And realizing that there is 100% this transference between the two that elopements actually gave me, I feel like, an edge to getting into the luxury market really easily because I had been giving so much to my clients and tailoring everything to them. And I think, other than dusting off my old flash and giving myself a little refresher on how to use that thing, because there's not often a need for it or like a
yep.
reception environment in general in um, an elopement versus a wedding day. But I think other than that, I didn't feel like I have had to focus on or change anything about what I do and how I do it. It was more like, how do I take what I already have that already exists? And I'm not even really adding anything to it or taking anything away. I'm just repositioning it to this other client
Mm,
and they exist and they want that too. And it's refreshing because not every luxury wedding photographer operates that way. So that actually really surprised me that and that was something that was a big deal too. I was like, if I'm going to get into this, here's the thing. I'm doing it because I definitely stretched in the business with motherhood and now anticipating my second baby. What is that going to look like? How can I be all here and all there? Because I don't feel like I have the capacity to like half-ass anything. I
mhm.
have to be fully present here and I have to be fully present there. So I don't want to add on all this stuff, like, oh, I'm going to, I want to now be a luxury wedding photographer. And that means I have to like add on all these experiences and offerings and gifts and all this stuff. Like a big thing for me was I don't want to do that. And is that possible? Because I'm doing this out of necessity because and with intention. And I'm curious. I want to know if there's a type of client who would like what I'm already doing
Mm, mhm,
in the luxury market. And
mhm.
I was surprised to find that, yes, absolutely, there is.
Yeah, what a like beautiful testament to the fact that like there truly is an ideal client for everyone and it's not necessary to change what you love or what you're doing or the way that you want to show up as an artist just because you think that's what a certain aspect of the market wants.
I find that a lot actually when I talk to photographers is they're like, this is what I want to get into, but if this is what it is, I don't want it. And I'm like, you can make it what you want it to be.
Hmm.
There's somebody that wants it. And maybe it's refreshing because the luxury market doesn't quite have it.
No,
And what you
absolutely.
offer is it's this really beautiful experience of being intentional um, that a lot of people don't want to give up. And why should you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think It's like so refreshing to hear too, because like you said, the luxury market does have such a rep for being like very impersonal. You don't get to know your clients. They want almost like a blueprint of what they're going to expect on the day. It's not very individualistic. And I think that keeps a lot of people from the luxury market. So it's so nice to hear that that's not something that you have to sacrifice in order to work within this realm.
Yeah, no, I don't think so at all.
I
And that
love
was a big, like, I'm not going to cross this line because it's not worth it for me. And that, I think that actually played a part in why it took me so long to decide, because I felt that, like, looking at the luxury market, you're like, what?
mm,
It feels so impersonal. It feels so copy paste. The pictures feel so unemotional. They feel so, I don't know. I don't know what the word quite is, but there is this impression of distance,
mm,
disconnection. And
mhm,
that's what I walked away from weddings in the first place and what got into elopements for. So now walking back into weddings, I just had this like really clear line in the sand where I was like, if I'm coming back, if I'm doing this again, I have to bring this with me,
mhm.
because I don't find that I can really operate without that relationship and intention and all of that. And the communication part, I think with clients, in that I'm not messaging them back and forth many times, but it might just be one email or one phone call or one piece of connection before the wedding day. um I was a little on edge about that, like, what is that mean, what is that going to be like in person? And I don't know, I just had the best clients so far this year
Love
that
that.
were just, they were so my people, you know. We live a different life, but oh, everything that I wanted to give was everything that they wanted. It was like such a perfect fit. And so it was just, yeah, again, affirming that this absolutely exists and the people that want it will want you.
And I love that you like kind of drew that line in the sand beforehand of like, this is where, that would be a make or break for me. And I think that's so important to know beforehand, like what feels good to you, what's going to feel good to you, what your lines are in terms of like artistry versus client expectations, all of that good stuff. So I love that. That's amazing to hear. And I think like so encouraging for anyone that's wanting to, like you said, like find more duality in their life and more nuance between the two and like have more free time outside of work. Um, as we kind of close up, what would you say like during this big transition? I know you said you're like what, like a year into this transition, is that right?
Not quite,
Okay.
almost 9 months or so.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay, so like 9 months. What has been your favorite part of it, and what has been either like the biggest challenge or your least favorite part?
Well, I think my favorite part has been that I really wanted to, I don't know, it's this really different perspective working with such a large budget. Like, you're getting paid so much more for a wedding, but I'm putting so much more back into it. The type of second shooters that I'm hiring, assistants, including film, um, researching so much more about the venue and the timeline and what I'm going to do when. And like, I have the whole day thought out, like, I'm going to use this lens and I'm going to do this. And oh, what if we, like, I feel like really creatively inspired by doing less and
Mhm.
having more to give to each of those projects. And I was like, this is what I've been wanting. Like, this is how I wanted to transition to bringing that type of intention that I had with elopements into a high-end market, and just having more room to put more time and energy and effort and finances and resources into creating something like a masterpiece. Each wedding just feels like a masterpiece, you know? And it's just been so incredible because I feel like then the work is so leveled up because I put all this extra time and resources into it. And the people that I'm getting to work with are just so incredible and so creative. And it's just like, I don't know. I think it's just been, that's definitely been a huge highlight for me, is it's just been really creatively inspiring to work on these really big projects. The hardest thing though, I mean, this is mostly just relevance to me in general, is I'm pregnant and I'm due in a few weeks.
Oh
And
my God.
I I'm like stopping my wedding season in the middle of the year,
Mm,
middle of the summer. And this year of transition is like cut short almost because
that makes
I'm
sense.
now, it's only July, August. I had to decline so many incredible opportunities this fall when I'm going to be in postpartum recovery. And it just put so much mental, emotional pressure on me of like, how can I use this year of transition? Oh, and you only get half of it.
Yeah, that's like a
You only
very,
get till
it's,
July.
yeah, I'm like, it's
And I
very
shot,
fascinating.
yeah, and I shot weddings into the beginning of July. And I was like crawling afterwards
I'm
because it was
sure.
just so much pressure on my body and my hips and all of that to work until I was 32 weeks. It was, some people can really go for it, but for me, I was like, this is absolutely my limit. And
Yeah.
that was with like a lot of physical support, having an assistant, having a personal trainer, like making sure that I could get to that finish line. So that was really hard personally for me. Just how can I do this and how can I do this all in this really short window? Because okay, finishing up in the beginning of July is really just 6 months, but nobody's shooting. I wasn't shooting weddings in January, February, March.
Mhm.
So it was like, here's a challenge
Yeah.
to change all of my content, transition my entire career into this brand new niche for me, discover it, learn it, experience it in only a handful of weddings, and then have a baby
And then clock out. Yeah. What is
and then
your,
clock out.
yeah, I'm like, what do you kind of do you have plans for the future? Are you taking it like week by week? Like what, how do you kind of anticipate everything going after this?
Well, my hope is that with what I was able to do with the last few months, I'll be able to at least get some more projects in 2024 that feel really similar and aligned. And I don't think I'll be like completely up and running as much as I would want to be in 2024. It might be really my second year of transition.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably fine because I'll have yet another small child in my life that I'm learning to balance and feed and soothe and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's just kind of a weird couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I decide to make such a huge transition
Very
at the
exciting.
same time as having a baby? And it's so funny because I felt like I did the same thing with my first. I launched my education business the year, like a month before I had my first kid.
Oh
So
my
it's
God.
almost like, okay, maybe this is a trend actually, that when something huge is happening in my life, I feel all this motivation to make a change,
Mm.
to to make sure that I am like moving in the right direction. And so it makes sense. But man, if I had done this last year, or if I chose to do this next year, that would have been a hell of a lot easier.
Well, I'm excited to see where it leads you. I'm like, it sounds like big changes are like your version of nesting.
I guess so.
Yeah, but
Let's
like,
work on some massive project and then have a
yeah, but like,
baby.
what a beautiful testament that you built such a beautiful like education business and that you were even able to like build such a fruitful business in a complete shift in just a few months. Like, that's such a testament to like one, your hard work and also just the quality of your work. So congratulations, because that's
Thank
huge
you.
and it's such a big thing to be proud of.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Annie. This was like so enlightening. I feel like I have so many thoughts as well that I'm gonna have to like think on and ponder on like what changes do I need to see more balance in my life in the ways that I do. And yeah, thank you so much. This was amazing.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. Obviously we will link everything for you for our listeners in the show notes, but would you mind letting us know where everyone can learn from you, see your work, all of that good stuff?
Yes. So Annie Graham is my website and my Instagram. And then if you want to come for education, it's immersed education. And all of our workshops and online courses are all hosted on there. So
Amazing.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming, Annie, and thank you guys for listening.